On the other hand, I hope this letter will make it plain that I feel no need at all to break off personal relations with you. I do not identify you with a point of doctrine. I have always tried to play fair with you and shall continue to do so, no matter how our personal relations turn out. Obviously, I would prefer to be on friendly terms with you, to whom I owe so much. But I want your objective judgment and no feelings of resentment. I think I deserve this much, if only for reasons of expediency. I have done more to promote the psychoanalytic movement than Rank, Steckel, Adler, etc. put together. I can only assure you that there is no resistance on my side unless it be my refusal to be treated like a fool riddled with complexes. I think I have objective reasons for my views. I hear difficulties have arisen with Steckel. I'd like to know a bit more about this, since the Zentralbad is the official organ. I can hardly conceive of your withdrawing as director. This would be a source of endless difficulties, also for the association, not to mention the loss of face. Steckel is the one who should quit. Steckel has done enough damage as it is with his mania for indecent confessions bordering on exhibitionism. I am rather surprised that as president, I have received no direct news. With best regards, most sincerely yours, Jung.
14th of November, 1912. Dear Dr. Jung, I greet you on your return from America, no longer as affectionately as on the last occasion in Nuremberg. You have successfully broken me of that habit, but still with considerable sympathy and interest, satisfaction at your personal success. Many thanks of the news of state affairs in America, but we know the battle will not be decided over there. You have reduced a great deal of resistance with your modifications, but I shouldn't advise you to enter this in the credit column because, as you know, the farther you remove yourself from what is new in the psychoanalysis, the more certain you will be of applause and the less resistance you will meet. You can count on my objectivity, and hence on the continuance of our relations. I still hold that personal variations are quite justified, and I still feel the same need to continue our collaboration. I must remind you that we first made friends at a time when you had gone back to the toxic theory of dementia praecox. I presume that you know why I withdrew as director instead of changing the editor. I saw that I did not have the power, that the publisher sided with Steckel and would find more indirect ways of forcing me out, which would have been of grave disadvantages. For a whole year, I should have had to take the responsibility for a journal which Steckel manipulated at will, on which I could exert no influence. And by next September, we should have been left without an organ. That was intolerable, and so I jettisoned the journal along with the editor. You ask not unreasonably, but what about the official character of the journal? Naturally, that was the first point I made in my discussions with Steckel. I suggested that we settle our dispute by letting the local groups, or the Viennese alone, to vote on it. I spoke of his obligations, but he was puffed up with possessive pride, and my appeals had no effect. His only answer was, "It's my journal, and none of the association's business." At this point, I should have taken the logical step of submitting the matter to the president for an official decision if said president had been within reach. But you had left for America without delegating anyone to attend to your presidential business. Yours, your colleague, Freud.
15 November 1912. Dear Professor Freud, your letter just arrived has evoked in me a psychoanalytical attitude which seems to be the only right one at the moment. I shall continue to go my own way undaunted. I shall take leave of Steckel's journal because I refuse to go on working with him. I dare not offer you my name for your journal, since you have disavowed me so thoroughly. My collaboration can hardly be acceptable. I should prefer to meet you on the neutral territory of the Jahrbuch, which I hope you will enable me to go on editing by not imposing too strict a regimen. I propose to let tolerance prevail in the Jahrbuch, so that everyone can develop in his own way. Only when granted freedom do people give of their best. We should not forget that the history of human truths is also the history of human errors. So let us give the well-meant error its rightful place. Whether my liberalism is compatible with the further conduct of the association's affairs is a question to be discussed by the association itself at the next Congress. As in my work heretofore, so now and in the future, I shall keep away from petty complexes and do unflinchingly what I hope to be true and right. With best regards, most sincerely yours, Jung.
Jung called the presidents of various European psychoanalytic branches to meet in Munich in order to formally settle Freud's plan of leaving the Zentralblatt Steckel and founding a new journal, the Internationale Zeitschrift, in place of it. During a 2-hour walk before lunch, Freud and Jung talked and seemed to reconcile their irritations with one another. But toward the end of the high-spirited lunch, Freud began to criticize the Swiss doctors for omitting Freud's name from their psychoanalytic publications. Suddenly he fainted. While the other men stood around dithering, Jung scooped him up and put Freud on a couch to recover.
26 November 1912. Dear Professor Freud, I am glad we were able to meet in Munich, as this was the first time I have really understood you. I realized how different I am from you. This realization will be enough to effect a radical change in my whole attitude. Now you can rest assured that I shall not give up our personal relationship. Please forgive the mistakes, which I will not try to excuse or extenuate. I hope the insight I have at last gained will guide my conduct from now on. I am most distressed that I did not gain this insight much sooner. It would have spared you so many disappointments. I have been very worried about how you got back to Vienna and whether the night journey may not have been too much of a strain. Please let me know how you are, if only a few words on a postcard. Yours sincerely, Jung.
Dear Dr. Jung, many thanks for your friendly letter, which shows me that you have dispelled various misconceptions about my conduct and encourages me to entertain the best of hopes for our future collaboration. Believe me, it was not easy for me to moderate my demands on you, but once I had succeeded in doing so, the swing in the other direction was not too severe, and for me, our relationship will always retain an echo of our past intimacy. I believe we shall have to lay by a fresh store of benevolence towards one another, for it is easy to see that there will be controversies between us, and one always finds it rather irritating that the other party insists on having an opinion of its own. Now I shall be glad to answer your questions. My attack in Munich was no more serious than the similar one at Essinghaus in Bremen. My condition improved in the evening, and I had an excellent night's sleep. According to my private diagnosis, it was a migraine, not without a psychic factor, which unfortunately I haven't time to track down now. The dining room of the Park Hotel seems to hold a fatality for me. 6 years ago I had a first attack of the same kind there, and 4 years ago a second. Bit of neurosis that I really ought to look into. Ferenczi will probably publish a study of your libido paper, which it is hoped will do justice both to the author and to his work. I am gradually coming to terms with this paper. yours, I mean, and now I believe that in it you have brought us a great revelation, though not the one you intended. You seem to have solved the riddle of all mysticism, showing it to be based on the symbolic utilization of complexes that have outlived their function. With kind regards to you and your wife, your untransformed Freud.
3 December 1912. This letter is a brazen attempt to accustom you to my style, so look out. Dear Professor Freud, my very best thanks for one passage in your letter where you speak about a, quote, bit of neurosis, end quote, which you haven't got rid of. This bit should, in my opinion, be taken very seriously indeed. I have suffered from this bit in my dealings with you, though you haven't seen it and didn't understand me properly when I tried to make my position clear. If these blinkers were removed, you would, I am sure, see my work in a very different light. As evidence that you, if I may be permitted so disrespectful an expression, underestimate my work by a very wide margin. I would cite your remark that, quote, without intending it, I have solved the riddle of all mysticism, showing it to be based on the symbolic utilization of complexes that have outlived their function, end quote. My dear professor, forgive me again, but this sentence shows me that you deprive yourself of the possibility of understanding my work by your underestimation of it. You speak of this insight as if it were some kind of pinnacle, whereas actually it is at the very bottom of the mountain. This insight has been self-evident to us for years. Again, please excuse my frankness. It is only occasionally that I am afflicted with the purely human desire to be understood intellectually and not to be measured by the yardstick of neurosis. Our analysis, you may remember, came to a stop with your remark that you, quote, could not submit to analysis without losing your authority, end quote. These words are engraved on my memory as a symbol of everything to come. I am writing to you now as I would write to a friend. This is our style. I therefore hope you will not be offended by my Helvetic bluntness. One thing I beg of you, take these statements as an effort to be honest, and do not apply the depreciatory Viennese criterion of egoistic striving for power or heaven knows what other insinuations from the world of the father complex. This is just what I have been hearing on all sides these days, with the result that I am forced to the painful conclusion that the majority of psychoanalysts misuse psychoanalysis for the purpose of devaluing others and their progress by insinuations about complexes as though that explained anything. A wretched theory. I want no infantile outpourings of libidinal appreciation or admiration from psychoanalysts, merely an understanding of my ideas. The pity of it is that psychoanalysts are just as supinely dependent on psychoanalysis as our opponents are in their belief in authority. This protective function of psychoanalysis badly needed unmasking. With kind regards, Jung.
Dear Dr. Jung, you mustn't fear that I take your new style amiss. I hold that in relations between analysts, as in analysis itself, every form of frankness is permissible. I, too, have been disturbed for some time by the abuse of psychoanalysis to which you refer, that is, in polemics, especially against new ideas. I do not know if there's any way of preventing this entirely. For the present, I can only suggest a household remedy. Let us each pay more attention to his own rather than his neighbor's neurosis. Very cordial yours, Freud.
18 December 1912. Dear Professor Freud, may I say a few words to you in earnest? I admit the ambivalence of my feelings toward you, but am inclined to take an honest and absolutely straightforward view of the situation. If you doubt my word, so much the worse for you. I would, however, point out that your technique of treating your pupils like patients is a blunder. In that way, you produce either slavish sons or impudent puppies. Adler, Steckel, and the whole insolent gang now throwing their weight about in Vienna. I am objective enough to see through your little trick. You go sniffing out all the symptomatic actions in your vicinity, thus reducing everyone to the level of sons and daughters who blushingly admit the existence of their faults. Meanwhile, you remain on top as the father, sitting pretty. For sheer obsequiousness, nobody dares to pluck the prophet by the beard and inquire for once what you would say to a patient with a tendency to analyze the analyst instead of himself. You would certainly ask him, who's got the neurosis? You see, my dear professor, as long as you hand out this stuff, I don't give a damn for my symptomatic actions. They shrink to nothing in comparison with the formidable beam in my brother Freud's eye. I am not in the least neurotic. Touch wood. If ever you should rid yourself entirely of your complexes and stop playing the father to your sons, and instead of aiming continually at their weak spots, took a good look at your own for a change, then I will mend my ways and at one stroke uproot the vice of being in two minds about you. I shall continue to stand by you publicly while maintaining my own views, but privately I shall start telling you in my letters what I really think of you. I consider this procedure only decent. No doubt you will be outraged by this peculiar token of friendship, but it may do you good all the same. With best regards, most sincerely yours, you.
January 3rd, 1913. Dear Mr. President, dear Doctor, I share your opinion that the circulars of the editors of this journal, not my circulars, as you put in your letter, ought to have been submitted to the President and will inform them of your recriminations. There can be certainly no question of ill will. I can answer only one point of your previous letters in any detail. Your allegation that I treat my followers like patients is demonstrably untrue. In Vienna, I am reproached for the exact opposite. I am held responsible for the misconduct of Steckel and Adler. In reality, I have not said one word to Steckel about his analysis since it was concluded some 10 years ago, nor have I made any use of analysis with Adler, who was never my patient. Any analytical remarks I have made about them were addressed to others, and for the most part at a time when we had ceased to associate with one another. Otherwise, your letter cannot be answered. It creates a situation that would be difficult to deal with in a personal talk and totally incomprehensible in correspondence. It is a convention among us analysts that none of us feel ashamed of his own bit of neurosis, but one who, while behaving abnormally, keeps shouting that he is normal, gives ground for the suspicion that he lacks insight into his illness. Accordingly, I propose that we abandon our personal relations altogether. I shall lose nothing by it, for my only emotional tie with you has long been a thin thread, the lingering effect of past disappointments.
Oh.
And you have everything to gain in view of the remark you recently made in Munich to the effect that an intimate relationship with a man inhibited your scientific freedom. I therefore say, take your full freedom and spare me your supposed tokens of friendship. We are agreed that a man should subordinate his personal feelings to the general interests of his branch of endeavor. You will never have reason to complain of any lack of correctness on my part where our common understanding and the pursuit of scientific aims are concerned. I may say no more reason in the future than in the past. On the other hand, I am entitled to expect the same from you. Regards, yours sincerely, Freud.
On the very same day that Freud was writing that letter, Carl Jung sat down and wrote a letter to Freud. These two letters passed in the mail, passed each other in the mail, the one that you will just now hear from Carl Jung.
3 January 1913. Dear Professor Freud, although you have evidently taken my first secret letter very much to heart, or very much amiss, I cannot refrain, while avoiding that topic, from offering you my friendly wishes for the new year. It is my hope that the psychoanalytical movement will continue to advance, its vitality unimpaired and indeed heightened by internal conflicts and cross currents. Without them, there is no life. When everything goes smoothly, petrifaction sets in. Don't hesitate to tell me if you want no more of my secret letters. I, too, can get along without them. Needless to say, I have no desire to torment you, but if you profess a friendly attitude toward me, I must insist on my right to reciprocate, and shall treat you with the same analytical consideration which you extend to me from time to time. You surely know that the understanding of psychoanalytical truths is in direct proportion to the progress one has made in oneself. If one has neurotic symptoms, there will be a failure of understanding somewhere. Where? Past events have already shown. So if I offer you the unvarnished truth, it is meant for your good, even though it may hurt. I think my honorable intentions are perfectly clear, so I need say no more. The rest is up to you. From the drift of this letter, you will be able to guess what my wishes are for the new year. With best regards, most sincerely yours, Jung.
And 3 days later, having read Freud's letter, Jung wrote this one.
6 January 1913. Dear Professor Freud, I accede to your wish that we abandon our personal relations, for I never thrust my friendship on anyone. You yourself are the best judge of what this moment means to you. The rest is silence. Thank you for accepting